So let's read through the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Player's Handbook. I remember as a kid walking into a local bookstore and seeing the Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide side by side on the shelf, and thought to myself, after looking at the artwork on the front cover and inside both books, that wow, this looks really cool. My imagination got sparked. I really wanted to create adventures and go on a adventure to fight dragons and evil minions. I had just gotten finished with The Lord of the Rings for the first time, and I really wanted to build some sort of game or play some sort of game that allowed me to go on an adventure like Frodo Baggins with a party with Aragorn or Legolas and Gimli, and really was excited to find these books and learn how to play this game and find people to play with. So let's start reading through. This newly advised, expanded, and updated version of the AD&D game provides everything players need to enter a world of fantastic role-playing adventure for intermediate through advanced players ages 10 and up. This is the indispensable encyclopedia of fantasy role-playing, and also the perfect companion to the referee's 2nd edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Everything players need is here. How to determine a character's strength, wisdom, charisma, and other abilities. The differences among the various fantasy races, from elves and halflings to dwarves, gnomes, and others. Complete rules for character improvement, the most advantageous mapping and combat procedures, and much more. All in this easy-to-use, revised version of the classic role-playing rulebook. With the 2nd edition, the best-selling role-playing game in history gets even better. Yeah, that doesn't sound exciting and make you want to go roll up some characters and find a group of friends to play and go on an adventure with? I don't know what would. Foreword to the 2nd edition. It has been a long time getting here. I don't mean the months, perhaps even years you may have waited for a revised, expanded, and improved 2nd edition of the AD&D game. I mean the long time it has taken me to reach this point, the writing of the foreword. Forewords are written last, so that you can summarize your feelings and experiences about the book you have written. It's not accurate to say this is a book that I alone have written. First off, there are a lot of other names listed in the credits. They, especially the editors, contributed time and talents that I don't have. Improving the organization and readability was one of the reasons we started this project in the first place. These are tasks that can't be done without talented editors who play and care about the game. If you discover that it's easier to find rules during your gaming sessions and that everything seems to make more sense, thank the editors. Even with the editors, this is not our work alone. None of this would ever have come into being without interested and involved players. The people who really decided what needed to be done for the 2nd edition are the players who mailed in questions, everyone who wrote an article for Dragon Magazine, and everyone who buttonholed me or other designers at conventions. These were the people who decided what needed to be done, what needed fixing, what was unclear, and what they just didn't like. I didn't sit in a vacuum and make these decisions. As the designer and developer, I had to make the final choice, but those choices were based on your input, and your input is the most valuable asset we have going. Well, it sounds like David Zeb Cook and the game designers took what they knew of AD&D 1st edition and took their own and other players' home-brewed rules and put what they thought were the best within this 2nd edition to try to streamline the rules and make things more clear that may not have been as clear in the 1st edition. That's really cool. So how do I feel? Excited, exhausted, relieved, and nervous all at once. It's a great bag of emotions. I'm excited to see this book come out. I've spent more time on this than I have on any other single work I've done. That leads to exhaustion. The 2nd edition has demanded and received hours upon months of attention. Now that it is finally coming out, the feeling of relief is beginning to set in. There were times when the task looked impossible, when it seemed it would never end, or when everything was going wrong. Only now, when it's in the final stages of polishing, am I beginning to realize that it is really done. And of course, there is nervousness. The AD&D game is the granddaddy of all role-playing games. You've made it perfectly clear that you liked the first edition of the AD&D game, even with all its warts. I liked and still like it. So now, with the arrival of the second edition, of course I'm nervous. None of this comes as any surprise. I volunteered to prepare the second edition because I wanted to do something for the game I liked. The 10 years of experience I've had in game design has shown me what works and what doesn't, and sometimes even why. At the very start, we outlined the goals. To make it easier to find things, to make the rules easier to understand, to fix the things that did not work, to add the best new ideas from the expansions and other sources, most important of all, to make sure the game was still the one you knew and enjoyed. Of them all, the last was the hardest and most demanding, conflicting as it did with my basic desire to design things. Fortunately, things didn't rest on me alone. Lots of eager eyes, from those of fellow designers to those of enthusiastic playtesters, minutely examined this book and restrained me from overzealousness. It hasn't always been easy to walk the fine line between not enough and too much. In the past 2 years, I've talked to interested players many times, hearing their concerns and sharing my ideas. It was at the end of one of these talks at a convention in Missoula, Montana, just as I described some rules change, that one of the listeners smiled and said, "You know, we've been doing that for years, and that is what the second edition is all about, collecting and organizing all those things that we, as players, have been doing for years." David Zeb Cook, January 1989. So it sounds like Zeb Cook and the rest of the game designers and editors for the second edition just brought in the rules that worked from the first edition and the homebrewed rules that other players and themselves were using to streamline the original AD&D rule set. So that's it's very interesting. Try to make it an easier and more robust and streamlined game, which arguably today may or may not have been the case, at least compared to rule sets from today. So the table of contents, we're looking at 14 chapters and several appendices. And the chapters that we'll go through, there'll be an introduction and a welcome to the AD&D game, the basics of how to play the game, a glossary of terms, and then chapter 1 is player character ability scores, chapter 2, player character races, chapter 3, player character classes, chapter 4, alignment, chapter 5, proficiencies, which is an optional rule, chapter 6, money and equipment, chapter 7, magic, chapter 8, experience, chapter 9, combat, which rightly so is the largest chapter in the book, not to include the spell list at the end of the appendices. Chapter 10, treasure, chapter 11, encounters, chapter 12, non-player characters or NPCs, chapter 13, vision and light, chapter 14, time and movement, Appendix 1, the spell lists, Appendix 2, notes on spells, Appendix 3, which I think is the longest section of the book, the wizard spells, Appendix 4, priest spells, Appendix 5, wizard spells by school, Appendix 6, priest spells by sphere, Appendix 7, the spell index, and then the Appendix 8 has the compiled character generation tables from throughout the book all in one place to try to make character generation a little bit easier, or at least more centralized in the book. Yeah, I really love the artwork in these AD&D 2e books. Really evocative, and they really sparked that desire to go on an imaginary adventure. So that was really cool. So, welcome to the second edition AD&D game. We are reading the key to the most exciting hobby in the world, role-playing games. These first few pages will introduce you to the second edition of the most successful role-playing game ever published. If you are a novice role player, stop right here and read the section labeled The Real Basics on the next page. When you understand what role-playing and the AD&D game are all about, come back to this point and read the rest of the introduction. If you are an experienced role player, skip the real basics. Let's assume that we are reading this for the first time and that we are novices to role-playing in AD&D, so we'll read the real basics section, which is this next page, the next 2 pages. And then we'll come back and we'll read this section. The real basics. This section is intended for novice role players. If you have played role-playing games before, don't be surprised if what you read here sounds familiar. Games come in a wide assortment of types. Board games, card games, word games, picture games, miniatures games. Even within these categories are subcategories. Board games, for example, can be divided into path games, real estate games, military simulation games, abstract strategy games, mystery games, and a host of others. Still, in all this mass of games, role-playing games are unique. They form a category of their own that doesn't overlap any other category. For that reason, role-playing games are hard to describe. Comparisons don't work because there isn't anything similar to compare them to. At least not without stretching your imagination, well beyond its normal everyday extension. But then stretching your imagination is what role-playing is all about. So let's try an analogy. Imagine that you are playing a simple board game called Snakes and Ladders. Your goal is to get from the bottom to the top of the board before all the other players. Along the way are traps that can send you sliding back toward your starting position. There are also ladders that can let you jump ahead, closer to the finish space. So far, it's pretty simple and pretty standard. Now let's change a few things. Instead of flat, featureless board with a path winding from side to side, let's have a maze. You are standing at the entrance and you know that there's an exit somewhere, but you don't know where. You have to find it. Instead of snakes and ladders, we'll put in hidden doors and secret passages. Don't roll a die to see how far you move. You can move as far as you want. Move down the corridor to the intersection. You can turn right or left or go straight ahead, or go back the way you came. Or as long as you're here, you can look for a hidden door. If you find one, it will open into another stretch of corridor. That corridor might take you straight to the exit or lead you into a blind alley. The only way to find out is to step in and start walking. Of course, given enough time, eventually you'll find the exit. To keep the game interesting, let's put some other things in the maze with you. Nasty things. Things like vampire bats and hobgoblins and zombies and ogres. Of course, we'll give you a sword and a shield, so if you meet one of these things, you can defend yourself. You do know how to use a sword, don't you? And there are other players in the maze as well. They have swords and shields too. How do you suppose another player would react if you chanced to meet? He might attack, but he also might offer to team up. After all, even an ogre might think twice about attacking 2 people carrying sharp swords and stout shields. Finally, let's put a board somewhere you can't see it. Let's give it to one of the players and make that player the referee. Instead of looking at the board, you listen to the referee as he describes what you can see from your position on the board. You tell the referee what you want to do, and he moves your piece accordingly. As the referee describes your surroundings, try to picture them mentally. Close your eyes and construct the walls of the maze around yourself. Imagine the hobgoblin as the referee describes it, whooping and gambling down the corridor towards you. Now imagine how you would react in the situation and tell the referee what you are going to do about it. We have just constructed a simple role-playing game. It is not a sophisticated game, but it has the essential element that makes it a role-playing game. The player is placed in the midst of an unknown or dangerous situation created by a referee and must work his way through it. This is the heart of role-playing. The player adopts the role of a character and then guides that character through an adventure. The player makes decisions, interacts with other characters and players, and essentially pretends to be his character during the course of the game. That doesn't mean that the player must jump up and down, dash around, and act like his character. It means that whenever the character is called on to do something or make a decision, the player pretends that he is in the situation and chooses an appropriate course of action. Physically, the players and the referee, the DM, or dungeon master, should be seated comfortably around a table with the referee at the head. Players need plenty of room for papers, pencils, dice, rule books, drinks, and snacks. The referee needs extra space for his maps, dice, rulebooks, and assorted notes. The goal. Another major difference between role-playing games and other games is the ultimate goal. Everyone assumes that a game must have a beginning and an end, and that the end comes when someone wins. That doesn't apply to role-playing games, because no one wins in a role-playing game. The point of playing is not to win, but to have fun and to socialize. An adventure usually has a goal of some sort. Protect the villagers from the monsters, rescue the lost princess, explore the ancient ruins. Typically, this goal can be attained in a reasonable playing time. 4 to 8 hours is standard. Well, 4 to 8 hours is a very, very long time. This might require the players to get together for 1, 2, or even 3 playing sessions to reach their goal and complete the adventure. Okay, that makes more sense. I thought it was a 4 to 8 hour playing session. But the game doesn't end when an adventure is finished. The same characters can go on to new adventures. Such a series of adventures is called a campaign. Remember, the point of an adventure is not to win, but to have fun while working toward a common goal. But the length of any particular adventure need not impose an artificial limit on the length of the game. The AD&D game embraces more than enough adventures to keep a group of characters occupied for years. Required materials. Aside from a copy of this book, very little is needed to play the AD&D game. You will need some sort of character record. TSR publishes character record sheets that are quite handy and easy to use, but any sheet of paper will do. Blank paper, lined paper, or even graph paper can be used. A double-sided sheet of paper 11 by 17 inches, folded in half, is excellent. Keep your character record in pencil, because it will change frequently during a game. A good eraser is also a must. That's interesting. I didn't realize that you could just use any piece of paper. I must have forgotten that, or not even realized it when I read this the first couple times. But that's interesting that you didn't even have to have a formal character record sheet. I remember having those, but you didn't need those. That's really interesting. A full set of polyhedral dice is necessary. A full set consists of 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20-sided dice. A few extra 6 and 10-sided dice are a good idea. Polyhedral dice should be available wherever you got this book. Throughout these rules, the various dice are referred to by a code that is in the form number of dice followed by D followed by a numeral for the type of dice. In other words, if you are to roll 1 6-sided die, you would see roll 1d6. 5 12-sided dice are referred to as 5d12. If you don't have 5 12-sided dice, just roll 1 5 times and add the results. When the rules say to roll percentile dice, or 1d100, you need to generate a random number from 1 to 100. One way to do this is to roll 2 10-sided dice of different colors. Before you roll, designate one die as the tens place and the other die as the ones place. Rolling them together enables you to generate a number from 1 to 100. A result of 0 on both dice is read as 00 or 100. For example, if the blue die representing the tens place rolls an 8 and the red die, ones place, rolls a 5, the result is 85. Another more expensive way to generate a number from 1 to 100 is to buy one of the dice that actually have numbers from 1 to 100 on them. At least one player should have a few sheets of graph paper from mapping the group's progress. Assorted pieces of scratch paper are handy for making quick notes, for passing secret messages to other players or the DM, or for keeping track of odd bits of information that you don't want cluttering up your character record. Miniature figures are handy for keeping track of where everyone is in a confusing situation like a battle. These can be as elaborate or simple as you like. Some players use miniature lead or pewter figures painted to resemble their characters. Plastic soldiers, chess pieces, board game pawns, dice, or bits of paper can work just as well. An example of play. To further clarify what really goes on during an AD&D game, read the following example. This is typical of the sort of action that occurs during a playing session. Shortly before this example begins, 3 player characters fought a skirmish with a were-rat, a creature similar to a werewolf, but which becomes an enormous rat instead of a wolf. The were-rat was wounded and fled down a tunnel. The characters are in pursuit. The group includes 2 fighters and a cleric. Fighter 1 is the group's leader. Dungeon Master. You've been following this tunnel for about 120 yards. The water on the floor is ankle deep and very cold. Now and then you feel something brush against your foot. The smell of decay is getting stronger. The tunnel is gradually filling with a cold mist. Fighter 1. I don't like this at all. Can we see anything up ahead that looks like a doorway or a branch in the tunnel? DM. Within the range of your torchlight, the tunnel is more or less straight. You don't see any branches or doorways. Cleric. The were-rat we hit had to come this way. There's nowhere else to go. Fighter 1. Unless we missed a hidden door along the way. I hate this place. It gives me the creeps. Fighter 2. We have to track down that were-rat. I say we keep going. Fighter 1. Okay, we keep moving down the tunnel, but keep your eyes open for anything that might be a door. DM. Another 30 or 35 yards down the tunnel, you find a stone block on the floor. Fighter 1. A block? I take a closer look. DM. It's a cut block about 12 by 16 inches and 18 inches or so high. It looks like a different kind of rock than the rest of the tunnel. Fighter 2. Where is it? Is it in the center of the tunnel or off to the side? DM. It's right up against the side. Fighter 1. Can I move it? DM. Checking the character's strength score. Yeah, you can push it around without too much trouble. Fighter 1. This is obviously a marker of some sort. I want to check this area for secret doors. Spread out and examine the walls. DM. Roll several dice behind his rulebook where players can't see the results. Nobody finds anything unusual along the walls. Fighter 1. It has to be here somewhere. What about the ceiling? DM. You can't reach the ceiling. It's about a foot beyond your reach. Cleric. Of course. That block isn't a marker, it's a step. I climb up on the block and start prodding the ceiling. DM. Rolling a few more dice. You poke around for 20 seconds or so, then suddenly part of the tunnel roof shifts. You found a panel that lifts away. Fighter 1. Open it very carefully. Cleric. I pop it up a few inches and push it aside slowly. Can I see anything? DM. Your head is still below the level of the opening, but you see some dim light from one side. Fighter 1. We boost him up so he can get a better look. DM. Okay, your friends boost you up into the room. Fighter 1. No. We boost him just high enough to get his head through the opening. DM. Okay, you boost him up a foot. The 2 of you are each holding one of his legs. Cleric, you can see another tunnel, pretty much like the one you were in, but it only goes off in one direction. There's a doorway about 10 yards away with a soft light inside. A line of muddy paw prints leads from the hole you're in to the doorway. Cleric. Fine. I want the fighters to go first. DM. As they're lowering you back to the block, everyone hears some grunts, splashing and clanking weapons coming from further down the lower tunnel. They seem to be closing fast. Cleric. Up. Push me back up through the hole. I grab the ledge and haul myself up. I'll help pull the next guy up. All 3 characters scramble up through the hole. DM. What about the panel? Fighter 1. We push it back into place. DM. It slides back into its slot with a nice loud clunk. The grunting from below gets a lot louder. Fighter 1. Great, they heard it. Cleric, get over here and stand on this panel. We're going to check out that doorway. DM. Cleric, you hear some shouting and shuffling around below you. Then there's a thump, and the panel you're standing on lurches. Cleric. They're trying to batter it open. DM. To the fighters. When you peer around the doorway, you see a small dirty room with a small cot, a table, and a couple of stools. On the cot is a were-rat curled up into a ball. Its back is towards you. There's another door in the far wall, and a small gong in the corner. Fighter 1. Is the were-rat moving? DM, not a bit. Cleric, the panel just thumped again. You can see a little crack in it now. Cleric, do something quick, you guys. When this panel starts coming apart, I'm getting off it. Fighter 1. Okay already. I step into the room and prod the weir rat with my shield. What happens? DM, nothing. You see blood on the cot. Fighter 1. Is this the same weir rat we fought before? DM, who knows? All weir rats look the same to you. Cleric, the panel thumps again. That crack is looking really big. Cleric, that's it. I get off the panel. I'm moving into the room with everybody else. DM, there's a tremendous smash, and you hear chunks of rock banging around you in the corridor, followed by lots of snarling and squeaking. You see flashes of torchlight and weir rat shadows through the doorway. Fighter 1. All right. The other fighter and I move up to block the doorway. That's the narrowest area. They can only come through it 1 or 2 at a time. Cleric, you stay in the room and be ready with your spells. Fighter 2. At last, a decent stand-up fight. DM. As the first weir rat appears in the doorway with a spear in his paws, you hear a slam behind you. Cleric, I spin around. What is it? DM, the door in the back of the room is broken off its hinges. Standing in the doorway holding a mace in each paw is the biggest, ugliest weir rat you've ever seen. A couple more pairs of red eyes are shining through the darkness behind him. He's licking his chops in a way that you find very unsettling. Cleric, ah! I scream the name of my deity at the top of my lungs and then flip over the cot with the dead weir rat on it so the body lands in front of him. I've got to have some help here, guys. Fighter 1 to Fighter 2. Help him. I'll handle this end of the room. To the DM. I'm attacking the weir rat in the doorway. DM. While Fighter 2 is switching positions, the big weir rat looks at the body on the floor and his jaw drops. He looks back up and says, That's Ignatz. He was my brother. You killed my brother. Then he raises both maces and leaps at you. At this point, ferocious melee breaks out. The DM uses the combat rules to play out the battle. If the characters survive, they can continue on whatever course they choose. Okay, so that was an example of playing D&D and how a very small portion of a session would go. So we'll flip back to the welcome section, and we'll continue reading from here. Why a second edition? Before answering that question, let's define what the second edition of the AD&D game is and is not. This second edition of the AD&D game is a lot different from the first edition. The presentation of the game has been cleaned up. The rules are reorganized, clarified, and streamlined. Where necessary, things that didn't work have been fixed. Things that did work haven't been changed. The second edition of the AD&D game is not a statement of what any one person thinks the game should be. It is the result of more than 3 years of discussion, thought, consultation, review, and playtesting. Now to the question of why a second edition. The AD&D game evolved over the course of 16 years. During that time, the game grew tremendously through play. Changes and improvements and a few mistakes were made. These were published in subsequent volumes. By 1988, the game consisted of 12 hardcover rulebooks. It was physically and intellectually unwieldy, but still a lot of fun. The time was right to reorganize and recombine all that information into a manageable package. That package is the second edition. So it sounds like the first edition of AD&D, which I did not play and have never read the rule books for, sounds like they had written multiple rule books with differing and additional rules, and it was just unwieldy to find a rule throughout all those books. So they've taken rules from all those additional books and put them in one place, or two places, the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. So they seem to have simplified things from previous editions. How the rule books are organized. The AD&D game rulebooks are intended primarily as reference books. They are designed so any specific rule can be found quickly and easily during a game. Everything a player needs to know is in the Player's Handbook. That's not to say that all the rules are in this book, but every rule that a player needs to know in order to play the game is in this book. A few rules have been reserved for the Dungeon Master's Guide, the DMG. These either cover situations that very seldom arise or give the Dungeon Master, the DM, information that players should not have beforehand. Everything else in the DMG is information that only the Dungeon Master needs. If the DM feels that players need to know something that is explained in the DMG, he will tell them. Like the DMG, the Monsters Compendium is the province of the DM. This gives complete and detailed information about the monsters, people, and other creatures inhabiting the AD&D world. Some DMs don't mind if players read this information, but the game is more fun if players don't know everything about their foes. It heightens the sense of discovery and danger of the unknown. I like that. I like the fact that in this edition, there was a separation between what the players should know and what the Dungeon Master should know. That keeps what I would imagine, that keeps the surprise, the unknown as part of the game. Characters don't know what to expect. Dungeon Master doesn't have to change the names and the stats and such of monsters to hide what they actually are. And I think it would keep it exciting. So I think it's really cool that the intent was to keep some things separate from players, but assume that that would keep down metagaming. If you've played the AD&D game before, you know almost everything you need to play the second edition. We advise you to read the entire player's handbook, but the biggest changes are in these chapters: character classes, combat, and experience. Be sure to read at least those 3 chapters before sitting down to play. If you come to a term you do not understand, look for it in the glossary, which begins on page 11. If you have never played the AD&D game before, the best way to learn to play the game is to find a group of experienced players and join them. They can get you immediately into the game and explain things as you need to know them. You don't need to read anything beforehand. In fact, it's best if you can play the game for several hours with experienced players before reading any of the rules. One of the truly marvelous things about a role-playing game is that even though the concept is difficult to explain, it is simple to demonstrate. If none of your friends are involved in a game, the best place to find experienced players is through your local hobby store. Role-playing and general gaming clubs are common and are always eager to accept new members. Many hobby stores offer a bulletin board through which DMs can advertise for new players, and new players can ask for information about new ongoing games. If there is no hobby store in your area, check at the local library or school. If you can't find anyone else who knows the AD&D game, you can teach yourself. Read the player's handbook and create some characters. Try to create a variety of character classes, then pick up a pre-packaged adventure module for low-level characters, round up 2 or 3 friends, and dive into it. You probably will make lots of mistakes and wonder constantly whether you are doing everything wrong. Even if you are, don't worry about it. The AD&D game is big, but eventually you'll bring it under control. I think that advice really still stands. If you're looking to play the game and you can't find anybody else to play with, roll up a few characters, find some friends, talk some friends into playing with you, and just give them the pre-generated characters and fumble through playing together as you learn the rules. That's really good advice. And in the process, I think that you can look up the rules with the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide and actually get to know what you're doing wrong and fix it for the next sessions. So I think that's really good advice. The second edition AD&D game line. Quite a few books and other products are published for the AD&D game. As a player, you need only one of them, this book. Every player and DM should have a copy of the player's handbook. Everything else is either optional or intended for the Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master's Guide is essential for the DM, and it is for the DM only. Players who are not themselves DMs have no cause to read the DMG. The Monsters Compendium is not one but several products. The book can be expanded whenever new compendiums are released. The first pack of monsters is essential to the game. It includes the most commonly encountered monsters, mythical beasts, and legendary creatures. Additional packs expand on these monsters and give the game more variety. Specialty compendiums, those for Greyhawk, The Forgotten Realms, Character, etc., are highly recommended for DMs who play in those settings. Expanded character class books, The Complete Fighter, The Complete Thief, etc., provide a lot more detail on these character classes than does the player's handbook. These books are entirely optional. They are for players who really want a world of choice for their characters. Adventure modules contain complete game adventures. These are especially useful for DMs who aren't sure how to create their own adventures, and for DMs who need an adventure quickly and don't have time to write one of their own. A note about pronouns. The male pronoun he, him, his is used exclusively throughout the second edition of the AD&D game rules. We hope this won't be construed by anyone to be an attempt to exclude females from the game or imply their exclusion. Centuries of use have neutered the male pronoun. In written material, it is clear, concise, and familiar. Nothing else is. Creating a character. To create a character to play in the AD&D game, proceed in order through chapters 1 through 6. Chapter 5 is optional. These chapters will tell you how to generate your character's ability scores, race, and class, decide on his alignment, pick proficiencies, and buy equipment. Once you have done all this, your character is ready for adventure. Okay, so let's skip over to the Glossary of Terms. Glossary. Ability. Any of the 6 natural traits that represent the basic definition of a player character. Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. A player character's abilities are determined at the beginning of a game by rolling 6-sided dice, d6s. The scores continue to be used throughout the game as a means of determining success or failure of many actions. Ability check. A 1d20 roll against one of your character's ability scores. Modifiers may be added to or subtracted from the die roll. A result that is equal to or less than your character's ability score indicates that the attempted action succeeds. AC, abbreviation for armor class. Alignment, a factor in defining a player character that reflects his basic attitude towards society and the forces of the universe. Basically, there are 9 categories demonstrating the character's relationship to order versus chaos and good versus evil. A player character's alignment is selected by the player when the character is created. Area of effect. The area in which a magical spell or a breath weapon works on any creatures unless they make a saving throw. Armor class, abbreviation AC. A rating for the protective value of a type of armor, figured from 10, no armor at all, to 0, or even -10, the best magical armor. The higher the AC, the more vulnerable the character is to attack. That was always confusing to me, going from 10 to and then down. But I did get used to it eventually, just like I got used to that roll. Attack roll. The 1d20 roll used to determine if an attack is successful. Bend bars / lift gates roll. The roll of percentile dice to determine whether a character succeeds in bending metal bars, lifting a heavy portcullis, or similar task. The result needed is a function of strength and can be found in Table 1. Bonus spells. Extra spells at various spell levels that a priest is entitled to because of high wisdom, shown in Table 5. Breath weapon. The ability of a dragon or other creature to spew a substance out of its mouth just by breathing, without making an attack roll. Those in the area of effect must roll a saving throw. CHA, abbreviation for Charisma. Chance of spell failure, the percentage chance that a priest spell will fail when cast, based on wisdom. It is shown in Table 5. Chance to know spell, the percentage chance for a wizard to learn a new spell, based on intelligence. It is shown in Table 4. Charisma, abbreviated CHA, an ability score representing a character's persuasiveness, personal magnetism, and ability to lead, not their physical attractiveness. Common, the language that all player characters in the AD&D game world speak. Other languages may require the use of proficiency slots. CON, abbreviation for Constitution. Constitution, abbreviated CON, an ability score that represents a character's general physique, hardiness, and state of health. D. Abbreviation for dice or die. A roll that calls for 2d6, for example, means that the player rolls 2 six-sided dice. D3. Since there is no such thing as a 3-sided die, a roll calling for D3 means to use a D6, making 1 and 2 be a 1, 3 and 4 be a 2, 5 and 6 be a 3. So basically a D6 divided by 3 and then rounding up. D4, a 4-sided die. D6, a 6-sided die. D8, an 8-sided die. D10, a 10-sided die. 2 D10s can be used as percentile die. D12, a 12-sided die. D20, a 20-sided die. D100, either an actual 100-sided die or 2 different colored 10-sided dice to be rolled as a percentile dice. DMG, a reference to the Dungeon Master's Guide. Damage, the effect of a successful attack or other harmful situation measured in hit points. Demi-human, a player character who is not human. A dwarf, an elf, a gnome, a half-elf, or a halfling. DEX, abbreviation for dexterity. Dexterity, abbreviated DEX, an ability score representing a combination of a character's agility, reflexes, hand-eye coordination, and the like. Dual class characters, a human who switches character class after having already progressed several levels. Only humans can be dual classed. Encumbrance, the amount in pounds that a character is carrying. How much he can carry and how being encumbered affects his movement rate are based on strength and are shown in tables 47 and 48. Encumbrance is an optional rule. Energy drain, the ability of a creature, especially undead, to drain energy in the form of class levels from a character in addition to the normal loss of hit points. Experience points, abbreviated XP, points a character earns, determined by the Dungeon Master for completing an adventure, for doing something related to his class particularly well, or for solving a major problem. Experience points are accumulated, enabling the character to rise in level in his class, as shown in Table 14 for Warriors, Table 20 for Wizards, Table 23 for Priests, and Table 25 for Rogues. Follower, a non-player character who works for a character for money but is initially drawn to his reputation. Gaze attack, the ability of a creature such as a basilisk to attack simply by making eye contact with the victim. Henchman, non-player characters who work for a character mainly out of loyalty and love of adventure. The number of henchmen a character can have is based on charisma and is shown in Table 6. The DM and the player share control of the henchman. Hireling, non-player characters who work for a character just for money. Hirelings are completely under the control of the DM. Hit dice, the dice rolled to determine a character's hit points. Up to a certain level, one or more new hit dice are rolled each time a character attains a new class level. A fighter, for example, has only one 10-sided die, 1d10, at first level, but when he rises to the second level, the player rolls a second d10, increasing the character's hit points. Hit points, a number representing 1. How much damage a character can suffer before being killed, determined by hit dice. The hit points lost to injury can usually be regained by rest or healing. 2. How much damage a specific attack does, determined by weapon or monster statistics and subtracted from a player's total. Infravision, the ability of certain character races or monsters to see in the dark. Infravision generally works up to 60 feet in the darkness. Initiative, the right to attack first in a combat round, usually determined by the lowest roll of a 10-sided die. The initiative roll is eliminated if surprise is achieved. INT, abbreviation for intelligence. Intelligence, abbreviated INT, an ability score representing a character's memory, reasoning, and learning ability. Italic type, used primarily to indicate spells and magical items. Level, any of several different game factors that are variable in degree. especially 1. Class level, a measure of the character's power starting at the first level as a beginning adventurer and rising through the accumulation of experience points to the 20th level or higher. At each level attained, the character receives new powers. 2. Spell level, a measure of the power of a magical spell. A magic-using character can use only those spells for which his class level qualifies him. Wizard spells come in 9 levels, Table 21. Priest spells in 7, Table 24. Loyalty base, a bonus added to or a penalty subtracted from the probability that henchmen are going to stay around when the going gets tough, based on the character's charisma. It is shown in Table 6. M, abbreviation for material component. Magical defense adjustment, a bonus added to or a penalty subtracted from saving throws versus spells that attack the mind, based on wisdom. It is shown in Table 5. Maneuverability class, a ranking for flying creatures that reflects their ability to turn easily in aerial combat. Each class, ranked top of A to a bottom rank of E, has specific statistical abilities in combat. Material component, abbreviated M, any specific item that must be handled in some way during the casting of a magic spell. Maximum press, the most weight a character can pick up and raise over his head. It is a function of strength and may be found in Table 1. Melee, combat in which characters are fighting in direct contact, such as with swords, claws, or fists, as opposed to fighting with missile weapons or spells. Missile combat, combat involving the use of weapons that shoot missiles or items that can be thrown. Because the combat is not toe-to-toe, the rules are slightly different than those for regular combat. Movement rate, a number used in calculating how far and how fast a character can move in a round. This number is in units of 10 yards per round outdoors, but it represents 10 feet indoors. Thus, an MR, or movement rate, of 6 is 60 yards per round in the wilderness, but only 60 feet per round in a dungeon. MR, abbreviation for movement rate. So again, movement rate is given as a number and then multiplied by 10. And if it's outdoors, it's multiplied by 10 yards per round, but if it's indoors, it's multiplied by 10 feet per round. So again, an MR of 6, or movement rate of 6, would be 60 yards outside and 60 feet inside. Multi-class character, a demi-human who improves in 2 or more classes at the same time by dividing experience points between the different classes. Humans cannot be multi-classed. Mythos, plural mythoi, a complete body of belief particular to a certain time or place, including the pantheon of its gods. Neutrality, a philosophical position or alignment of a character that is between belief in good or evil, order or chaos. Non-player character, any character controlled by the DM instead of a player. NPC, abbreviation for the non-player character. Open doors roll, the roll of a 20-sided die to see if a character succeeds in opening a heavy or stuck door or performing a similar task. The die roll at which the character succeeds can be found in Table 1. Opposition school, a school of magic that is directly opposed to a specialist school of choice, thus preventing him from learning spells from that school, as shown in the Table 22. PC, abbreviation for player character. Percentage or percent chance, a number between 1 and 100, used to represent the probability of something happening. If a character is given an X percentage chance of an event occurring, the player rolls percentile dice. Percentile dice, either a 100-sided die or 2 10-sided dice used in rolling a percentage number. If 2d10 are used, they are of different colors, and one represents the tens digit, while the other is the ones. Player character, abbreviated PC. The characters in a role-playing game who are under the control of the players. Poison save, a bonus or a penalty to a saving throw versus poison. Based on Constitution, it is shown in Table 3. Prime requisite, the ability score that is most important to a character class. For example, strength to a fighter. Proficiency, a character's learned skill not defined by his class, but which gives him a greater percentage chance to accomplish a specific type of task during an adventure. Weapon and non-weapon proficiency slots are acquired as the character rises in level, as shown in Table 34. The use of proficiencies in the game is optional. Proficiency check, the roll of a 20-sided die to see if a character succeeds in doing a task by comparing the die roll to the character's relevant ability score plus or minus any modifiers shown in Table 37. The modified die roll must be equal to or less than the ability score for the action to succeed. QV, which see or turn to, and you can see that QV is actually in some of these abbreviations, like for MR, abbreviation for movement rate, QV means see movement rate or turn to movement rate, which is silly because they probably just could have eliminated the QV altogether. But race, a player character's species, human, elf, dwarf, gnome, half-elf, or halfling. Race puts some limitations on the PC's class. Rate of fire, abbreviated ROF, number of times a missile firing or thrown weapon can be shot in a round. Reaction adjustment, a bonus added to or penalty subtracted from a die roll used in determining the success of a character's action. Such an adjustment is used especially in reference to surprise, shown in Table 2 as a function of dexterity, and the reaction of other intelligent beings to a character, shown in Table 6 as a function of charisma. Regeneration, a special ability to heal faster than usual based on an extraordinarily high constitution, as shown in Table 3. Resistance, the innate ability of a being to withstand attack, such as by magic. Gnomes, for example, have a magic resistance that adds bonuses to their saving throws against magic. Table 9. Resurrection survival, the percentage chance a character has of being magically raised from death, based on Constitution. It is shown in Table 3. Reversible, of a magic spell, able to be cast backwards so that the opposite of the usual effect is achieved. So I guess that would be like cure, or cure wounds being reversible to cause wounds, I guess. I guess when we get to spells, we'll see how that works. ROF, abbreviation for rate of fire. Round, in combat, a segment of time approximately 1 minute long, during which a character can accomplish one basic action. 10 combat rounds equal 1 turn. S, abbreviation for somatic component. Saving throw, a measure of a character's ability to resist, to save versus special types of attacks, especially poison, paralyzation, magic, and breath weapons. Success is usually determined by the roll of 1d20. School of Magic, one of 9 different categories of magic based on the type of magical energy utilized. Wizards who concentrate their work in a single school are called specialists. The specific school of which a spell is a part is shown after the name of the spell in the spell section at the end of the book. Somatic components, abbreviated S, the gestures that a spellcaster must use to cast a specific spell. A bound wizard cannot cast a spell requiring somatic components. Specialist, a wizard who concentrates on a specific school of magic, as opposed to a mage who studies all magic in general. Spell immunity, protection that certain characters have against illusions or other specific spells, based on high intelligence, Table 4, or wisdom, Table 5. Sphere of influence, any of 16 categories of clerical spells to which a priest may have major access. He can eventually learn them all. Or minor access, he can learn only the lower level spells. The relevant sphere of influence is shown as the first item in the list of characteristics in the priest's spells. STR, abbreviation for strength. Strength, abbreviated STR, an ability score representing a character's muscle power, endurance, and stamina. Surprise roll, the roll of a 10-sided die by the dungeon master to determine if a character or group takes another by surprise. Successful surprise, a roll of 1, 2, or 3, cancels the roll for initiative on the first round of combat. System shock, a percentage chance that a character survives major magical effects, such as being petrified. Based on Constitution, it is shown in Table 3. THACO, an acronym for to hit armor class 0, the number that a character needs to roll in order to successfully hit a target with AC or armor class 0. THACO is one of the primary sticking points for AD&D 2E for many people who are learning it for the first time or dislike the system. When we get to it, we'll walk through it briefly so that it can be explained. It really is just some simple math, and once you get your head around it, it is very simple to figure out. Two-hit roll, another name for an attack roll. Turn, in-game time approximately 10 minutes, used especially in figuring how long various magic spells may last. In combat, a turn consists of 10 rounds. Turn Undead, a magical ability of a cleric or paladin to turn away an undead creature, such as a skeleton or a vampire. V, abbreviation for verbal component. Verbal component, specific words or sounds that must be uttered while casting a spell. Weapon speed, an initiative modifier used in combat that accounts for the time required to get back into position to reuse a weapon. WIS, abbreviation for wisdom. Wisdom, abbreviated WIS, an ability score representing a composite of a character's intuition, judgment, common sense, and willpower. XP, abbreviation for experience points. Chapter 1, Player Character Ability Scores. To venture into the world of the AD&D game, you first need to create a character. The character you create is your alter ego in the fantasy realms of this game, a make-believe person who is under your control and through whom you vicariously explore the world the Dungeon Master DM has created. Each character in the AD&D game has 6 abilities: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. The first 3 abilities represent the physical nature of the character, while the second 3 quantify his mental and personality traits. In various places throughout these rules, the following abbreviations are used for the ability names: Strength, abbreviated STR, Dexterity, abbreviated DEX, Constitution, abbreviated CON, Intelligence, abbreviated INT, Wisdom, abbreviated WIS, Charisma, abbreviated CHA. Rolling ability scores. Let's first see how to generate ability scores for your character, after which definitions of each ability will be given. The 6 ability scores are determined randomly by rolling 6-sided dice to obtain a score from 3 to 18. There are several methods for rolling up these scores. Method 1. Roll 3 6-sided dice, 3d6. The total shown on the dice is your character's strength ability score. Repeat this for Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, in that order. This method gives a range of scores from 3 to 18, with most results in the 9 to 12 range. Only a few characters have high scores, 15 and above, so you should treasure these characters. This is the method I always enjoyed when I would roll up my characters. Just roll 3d6 down the line, and you get the scores that you get. You don't have superhero characters, and some of the characters will have low stats, which will make them difficult to play, but fun for role-playing. So here are some alternative dice rolling methods. Method 1 creates characters whose ability scores are usually between 9 and 12. If you would rather play a character of truly heroic proportions, ask your DM if he allows players to use optional methods for rolling up characters. These optional methods are designed to produce above-average characters. Method 2. Roll 3d6 twice, noting the total of each roll. Use whichever result you prefer for your character's strength score. Repeat this for Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. This allows you to pick the best score for each pair, generally ensuring that your character does not have any really low ability scores. But low ability scores are not all that bad anyway. So to summarize that, So to summarize and explain that method number 2, you would roll 2 sets of 3d6 for strength, total each roll, and then choose the highest of those 2 rolls. 3d6 once, total that, and then 3d6 again, total that, and then pick the highest value for your strength. And you would repeat that for each of Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. So basically you have 2 chances of getting a high ability score for each ability. Method 3. Roll 3d6 6 times and jot down the total for each roll. Assign the scores to your character's 6 abilities however you want. This gives you the chance to custom tailor your character, although you are not guaranteed high scores. So again, this just allows you to roll 6 times and then assign those values from the 3d6 dice to whichever ability score you wish. So you don't get multiples per each. Method 4. Roll 3d6 12 times and jot down all 12 totals. Choose 6 of these rolls, generally the 6 best rolls, and assign them to your character's abilities however you want. This combines the best of methods 2 and 3, but takes somewhat longer. As an example, Joan rolls 3d6 12 times and gets results of 12, 5, 6, 8, 10, 15, 9, 12, 6, 11, 10, and 7. She chooses the 6 best rolls, 15, 12, 12, 11, 10, and 10, and then assigns them to her character's abilities so as to create the strengths and weaknesses that she wants her character to have. See the ability descriptions following this section for explanations of the abilities. Method 5. Roll 4 6-sided dice, 4d6, discard the lowest die, and total the remaining 3. Repeat this 5 more times, then assign the 6 numbers to the character's abilities however you want. This is a fast method that gives you a good character, but you can still get low scores. After all, you could roll 1s on all 4 dice. So again, for method 5, you roll 4d6 for strength, and just drop the lowest dice, total up the other 3, that's your strength score. And you repeat that for each. So 4 dice, drop the lowest for each ability score. Method 6. This method can be used if you want to create a specific type of character. It does not guarantee that you will get the character you want, but it will improve your chances. Each ability starts with a score of 8, then roll 7 dice. These dice can be added to your character's abilities as you wish. All the points on a die must be added to the same ability score. For example, if a 6 is rolled on one die, all 6 points must be assigned to one ability. You can add as many dice as you want to any ability, but no ability score can exceed 18 points. If you cannot make an 18 by exact count on the dice, you cannot have an 18 score. So basically for method 6, you start with a base value of 8 in each ability, and then you roll 7 dice. Each one of those dice can then be added to a given ability. As many dice as you want, up to and not exceeding values of 18 for a given ability. And if you can't make 18 with an exact number of dice, you won't be able to get the 18. And in a third video for this chapter, I'll go through each of these methods, roll up some characters, and give a practical demonstration of how these methods are used and how they differ from each other. The ability scores. The 6 character abilities are described below. Each description gives an idea of what that ability encompasses. Specific game effects are also given. At the end of each ability description is a table giving all modifiers and game information for each ability score. The unshaded area of these tables contains scores a player character can have naturally, without the aid of magical devices, spells, or divine intervention. The blue shaded ability scores can be obtained only by extraordinary means, whether by good fortune, finding a magical book that raises a score, or ill fortune, an attack by a creature that lowers a score. So now we get into the descriptions of each of the abilities, but before that, let's take a look at a sample of one of the ability scores tables. So here's a strength table, dexterity table, constitution table, intelligence table, and the wisdom table. and the charisma table. And as stated in the description I just read, the blue shaded areas cannot be gotten by natural means. They have to be achieved by extraordinary means. So for charisma, as an example, a character can't start or roll up a 1 with any natural modifiers. It would have to be a curse or some sort of effect from an enemy or magical item. Same thing with 19 through 25 as a value for the ability score. They would have to have some sort of magic item or divine intervention to reach those scores. Strength. Strength measures a character's muscle, endurance, and stamina. The ability is the prime requisite of warriors because they must be physically powerful in order to wear armor and wield heavy weapons. A fighter with a score of 16 or more in strength gains a 10% bonus to the experience points he earns. Furthermore, any warrior with a strength of 18 is entitled to roll percentile dice, see the glossary, to determine exceptional strength. Exceptional strength improves the character's chance to hit an enemy, increases the damage he causes with each hit, increases the weight the character is able to carry without a penalty for encumbrance, see below, and increases the character's ability to force open doors and similar portals. The rest of this section on strength consists of explanations of the columns in Table 1. Refer to the table as you read. So here's Table 1 for strength. Across the top you have the ability score, column, hit probability, damage adjustments, weight allowance, so how much weight a character can carry, max press, the number in pounds I believe that a character can lift over his head, open doors modifiers, bend bars, and lift gates modifiers, and any notes on what that strength level would actually entail or be comparable to. So let's see. So hit probability. Hit probability adjustments are added to or subtracted from the attack roll rolled on 1d20, one 20-sided die during combat. A bonus, positive number, makes the opponent easier to hit. A penalty, negative number, makes him harder to hit. So looking at hit probability in the strength table, any ability score 7 or below is going to get a penalty ranging from -1 down to -5. Any ability score between 8 and 16 is going to be normal and not get a bonus or penalty for hit probability. And anything from 17 to 25 or above would get a bonus between 1 and 7 for hit probability. Damage adjustment. Damage adjustment also applies to combat. The listed number is added to or subtracted from the dice roll to determine the damage caused by an attack. Regardless of subtractions, a successful attack roll can never cause less than 1 point of damage. For example, a short sword normally causes 1d6 points of damage, a range of 1 to 6. An attacker with a strength 17 causes 1 extra point of damage for a range of 2 to 7 points of damage. The damage adjustment also applies to missile weapons, although bows must be specifically made to gain the bonus. Crossbows never benefit from the user's strength. So that means that although strength bonuses can be applied to some bows, never a crossbow, but some bows that are specifically made to allow for being shot with a greater strength of the user, I suppose. So damage adjustment, if we look at the strength table, table 1, any ability score 5 and below will receive a damage adjustment penalty between 1 and 4. Any ability score from 6 to 15 will be no penalty or bonus adjustment in the damage adjustment column. And then any ability score from 16 to 25 and above would receive a damage adjustment bonus ranging from 1 to 14 points. Weight allowance. Weight allowance is the weight in pounds a character can carry without being encumbered. Encumbrance measures how a character's possessions hamper his movement. See the glossary. These weights are expressed in pounds. A character carrying up to the listed weight can move his full movement rate. So we look at the table 1, the strength table, table 1. Ability scores from 1 to 18, which would be the normal 3d6 rolls. The weight allowance would range from 1 pound to 110 pounds that a character can carry. Any exceptional strength with a percentile bonus from a ability score of 18 with a percentile bonus ranging from 1% to 100% would increase the weight allowance anywhere between 135 pounds max to 335 pounds max that a character could carry. And then from an ability score of 19 to 25, the weight allowance goes up to from 485 pounds to a maximum of 1,535 pounds, basically what a Titan or Storm Giant could carry. Maximum press. Maximum press is the heaviest weight a character can pick up and lift over his head. A character cannot walk more than a few steps this way. No human or humanoid creature without exceptional strength can lift more than twice his body weight over his head. In 1987, the world record for lifting a weight overhead in a single move was 465 pounds. A heroic fighter with strength of 18/100, see table 1, can lift up to 480 pounds the same way, and he can hold it overhead for a longer time. So max press would range from 3 pounds for an ability score of 1 all the way up to 1,750 pounds for ability scores of 25 and higher, and the average would be between 115 pounds to 480 pounds depending on strength ability scores. Open doors. Open doors indicates the character's chance to force open a heavy or stuck door. When a character tries to force open a door, roll 1d20. If the result is equal to or less than the listed number, the door opens. A character can keep trying to open a door until it finally opens, but each attempt takes time, exactly how much is up to the DM, and makes a lot of noise. Numbers in parentheses are the chances on 1d20 to open a locked, barred, or magically held door, but only one attempt per door can ever be made. If it fails, no further attempts by that character can succeed. So in the open doors column, an ability score of 1 would require a 1 on a 1d20 to open the doors. And there's no chance of opening a magical or locked or barred door. Once you get to ability score 18 with a 91 to 99 percentile addition, you'd have to roll a 15 on a 1d20 to open a closed door or stuck door, and you would have you'd have to roll a 3 or lower to open up a magically sealed, held, or barred or locked door. And even with a ability score of 25, open door roll would still have to be 19 or lower, and a magically sealed or a locked or a barred door would have to be 18 or lower. So there's, even at ability score 25, there's still a chance that you would fail to open that door if you roll at 20. Bend bars, lift gates. Bend bars, lift gates states the character's percentage chance rolled on a percentile die to bend normal, soft iron bars, lift a vertical gate, portcullis, or perform a similar feat of enormous strength. When the character makes the attempt, roll percentile dice. If the number rolled is equal to or less than the number listed in table 1, the character bends the bar or lifts the gate. If the attempt fails, the character can never succeed at that task. A character can, however, try to bend the bars on a gate that he couldn't lift, and vice versa. So bend bars, lift gates. You have a 0% chance up until you have an ability score of 8 or more. Then you start at 1%, all the way up to 40% for an ability score of 18/100. If you have exceptional strength, 19 to 25, your bend bars, lift gates goes from 50% all the way up to 99%. Dexterity. Dexterity, DEX, encompasses several physical attributes including hand-eye coordination, agility, reaction speed, reflexes, and balance. Dexterity affects a character's reaction to a threat or surprise, his accuracy with thrown weapons and bows, and his ability to dodge an enemy's blows. It is the prime requisite of rogues and affects their professional skills. A rogue with a dexterity score of 16 or higher gains a 10% bonus to the experience points he earns. Reaction adjustment. Reaction adjustment modifies the die roll to see if a character is surprised when he unexpectedly encounters NPCs. The more positive the modifier, the less likely the character is to be surprised. So on the Dexterity table, table 2, we look at the reaction adjustment column, and ability scores between 1 and 5, you would get a penalty ranging from -1 to -6. Ability scores from 6 to 15 don't have any reaction adjustment penalties or bonuses. And from ability scores of 16 to 25, the reaction adjustment would have a bonus of 1 to 5, depending on the ability score. Missile attack adjustment. Missile attack adjustment is used to modify a character's die roll whenever he uses a missile weapon, a bow, or a thrown weapon. A positive number makes it easier for the character to hit with a missile, while a negative number makes it harder. So again, in the Dexterity table, table 2, the missile attack adjustment, you're getting a penalty between ability scores 1 and 5, ranging from -1 to -6. Ability scores 6 to 15 have no penalty or bonus for missile attack adjustment, and then ability scores 16 to 25 have bonuses for missile attack adjustment, ranging from +1 to +5. Defensive adjustment. Defensive adjustment applies to a character's saving throws, see the glossary, against attacks that can be dodged, lightning bolts, boulders, etc. It also modifies the character's armor class, see the glossary, representing his ability to dodge normal missiles and parry weapon thrusts. For example, Wrath is wearing chainmail, giving him an armor class of 5. If his dexterity score is 16, his armor class is modified by -2 to 3, making him harder to hit. If his dexterity score is 5, his armor class is modified by +2 to 7, making him easier to hit. In some situations, beneficial dexterity modifiers to armor class do not apply. Usually this occurs when a character is attacked from behind or when his movement is restricted. Attacked while prone, tied up, on a ledge, climbing a rope, etc. So the defensive adjustments, in this case, positive numbers are bad and negative numbers are good. So ability scores 1 through 6 will give you a +1 to 5, so a penalty to your armor class. Ability scores 7 to 14 will give no penalty or bonus. And then ability scores 15 to 25 will give you a -1 to -6 or a bonus between 1 and 6 to your armor class. Again, remember that even though we haven't read about it yet, AC or armor class in AD&D 2E, the lower the score, the better. So you start at 10, which is no armor, and it goes down to 0 or even down to -10, and the lower the score, the better. So in this case, a negative in defensive adjustment is actually a bonus for defensive adjustments for a character. Constitution. A character's Constitution, CON, score encompasses his physique, fitness, health, and physical resistance to hardship, injury, and disease. Since this ability affects the character's hit points and chances of surviving such tremendous shocks as being physically reshaped by magic or resurrected from death, it is vitally important to all classes. Some classes have minimal allowable Constitution scores. A character's initial Constitution score is the absolute limit to the number of times the character can be raised or resurrected from death. Each such revival reduces the character's Constitution score by 1. Magic can restore a reduced Constitution score to its original value or even higher, but this has no effect on the number of times a character can be revived from the death. Once the character has exhausted his original Constitution, nothing short of divine intervention can bring him back, and divine intervention is reserved for only the bravest and most faithful heroes. For example, Wrath's Constitution score at the start of his adventuring career is 12. He can be revived from death 12 times. If he dies a 13th time, he cannot be resurrected or raised. Hit point adjustment. Hit point adjustment is added to or subtracted from each hit die rolled for the character. However, no hit die ever yields less than 1 hit point, regardless of modifications. If an adjustment would lower the number rolled to 0 or less, consider the final result to be 1. Always use the character's current Constitution to determine hit point bonuses and penalties. Only warriors are entitled to a Constitution bonus of 3 or 4. Non-warrior characters who have Constitution scores of 17 or 18 receive only +2 per die. The Constitution bonus ends when a character reaches 10th level, 9th for warriors and priests. Neither the Constitution bonus nor hit dice are added to a character's hit points after he has passed this level. See the character class descriptions that start on page 25. If a character's Constitution changes during the course of adventuring, his hit points may be adjusted up or down to reflect the change. The difference between the character's current hit point bonus, if any, and the new bonus is multiplied by the character's level, up to 10, and added to or subtracted from the character's total. If Desleonora's Constitution increased from 16 to 17, she would gain 1 hit point for every level she had up to 10th level. So we look at the Constitution table, table 3. Hit point adjustment. You get a negative hit point adjustment for ability scores 1 through 6, ranging from -1 to -3. No bonus or penalty from ability scores 7 to 14. And then you get a hit point adjustment bonus for ability scores 15 to 25, ranging from +1 to +2 for non-warriors, or +1 to +7 for warrior classes. System shock. System shock states the percentage chance of a character has to survive magical effects that reshape or age his body, petrification and reversing petrification, polymorph, magical aging, etc. It can also be used to see if the character retains consciousness in particularly difficult situations. For example, an evil mage polymorphs his dim-witted hireling into a crow. The hireling, whose Constitution score is 13, has an 85% chance to survive the change. Assuming he survives, he must successfully roll for system shock again when he is changed back to his original form, or else he will die. System shock percent chance range from 25% at ability score 1 all the way up to 100% at ability score 25. For characters, ability score 18 would be 99%. Resurrection survival. Resurrection survival lists a character's percentage chance to be successfully resurrected or raised from death by magic. The player must roll the listed number or less on percentile dice for the character to be revived. If the dice roll fails, the character is dead, regardless of how many times he has previously been revived. Only divine intervention can bring such a character back again. So the resurrection survival column on the Constitution table, table 3, shows a starting percentile chance of 30% at ability score 1, ranging up to 100% chance of being resurrected or surviving resurrection at ability score 18 to 25. And again, to reiterate, even if your Constitution would allow the character to still be resurrected based on the Constitution ability score, you might not survive the resurrection procedure if you don't roll equal to or less than your resurrection survival percentage. Poison save. Poison save modifies the saving throw versus poison for humans, elves, gnomes, and half-elves. Dwarves and halflings do not use this adjustment, since they have special resistance to poison attacks. The DM has specific information on saving throws. So poison save column on the Constitution table, table 3. Characters with Constitution ability scores of 1 or 2 get penalties to their poison saves, ranging from -1 to -2. Ability scores from 3 to 18 get no bonus or penalty for the poison save, and then ability scores 19 to 25 get bonuses ranging from 1 to 4. Regeneration. Regeneration enables those with specially endowed constitutions, perhaps by a wish or magical item, to heal at an advanced rate, regenerating damage taken. The character heals 1 point of damage after the passage of the listed number of turns. However, fire and acid damage, which are more extensive than normal wounds, cannot be regenerated in this manner. These injuries must heal normally or be dealt with by magical means. So looking at the Constitution table, table 3, the regeneration column, only ability scores of 20 or more have any chance of resurrection, starting at 1 point every 6 turns to 1 HP every turn at ability score 25. And again, looking at the hit point adjustment from earlier, ability scores 17 through 19 get a bonus of 2, or 3, 4, and 5 respectively for warriors, and the parenthetical bonus applies to warriors only. As mentioned, all other classes receive maximum bonus of +2 die. For ability scores 20, all ones rolled for hit dice are automatically considered 2s. And then for ability scores 21 and 22, all 1s and 2s rolled for hit dice are automatically considered 3s for hit point adjustment. And then for any ability score over 23, all 1s, 2s, and 3s rolled for hit dice are automatically considered 4s for any hit point adjustments. Intelligence. Intelligence represents a character's memory, reasoning, and learning ability, including areas outside those measured by the written word. Intelligence dictates the number of languages a character can learn. Intelligence is the prime requisite of wizards, who must have keen minds to understand and memorize magical spells. A wizard with an intelligence score of 16 or higher gains a 10% bonus to experience points earned. The wizard's intelligence dictates which spells he can learn and the number of spells he can memorize at one time. Only those of the highest intelligence can comprehend the mighty magic of 9th level spells. This ability gives only a general indication of a character's mental acuity. A semi-intelligent character, intelligence 3 or 4, can speak with difficulty and is apt to react instinctively and impulsively. He is not hopeless as a player character, but playing such a character correctly is not easy. A character with low intelligence, intelligence 5 through 7, could also be called dull-witted or slow. A very intelligent person, intelligence 11 or 12, picks up new ideas quickly and learns easily. A highly intelligent character, intelligence 13 or 14, is one who can solve most problems without even trying very hard. One with exceptional intelligence, intelligence 15 or 16, is noticeably above the norm. A genius character is brilliant, intelligence 17 or 18. A character beyond genius is potentially more clever and more brilliant than can possibly be imagined. However, the true capabilities of a mind lie not in numbers, IQ, intelligence score, or whatever. Many intelligent or even brilliant people in the real world fail to apply their minds creatively and usefully, thus falling far below their own potential. Don't rely too heavily on your own character's intelligence scores. You must provide your character with the creativity and energy he supposedly possesses. Number of languages. Number of languages lists the number of additional languages the character can speak beyond his native language. Every character can speak his native language, no matter what his intelligence is. This knowledge extends only to speaking the language. It does not include reading or writing. The DM must decide if your character begins the game already knowing these additional languages, or if the number shows only how many languages your character can possibly learn. The first choice will make communication easier, while the second increases your opportunities for role-playing, finding a tutor, or creating a reason why you need to know a given language. Furthermore, your DM can limit your language selection based on his campaign. It is a perfectly fair rule that your fighter from the Frozen Wastes hasn't the tongues of the Southlands, simply because he has never met anyone who has been to the Southlands. If the DM allows characters to have proficiencies, this column also indicates the number of extra proficiency slots the character gains due to his intelligence. These extra proficiency slots can be used however the player desires. The character never needs to spend any proficiency slots to speak his native language. Looking at the intelligence table, table 4, characters with the ability score of 1 would get no languages. However, while unable to speak a language, the character can still communicate by grunts and gestures. Characters with ability scores 2 through 8 in intelligence would gain only 1 language. Characters with ability scores 9 through 11 would gain 2 languages. Ability scores 12 to 13 would be given 3 languages. Characters with ability scores and intelligence of 14 and 15 would gain 4 languages. Ability score 16 would gain 5 languages. 17 through 25 would gain 6 to 20 languages, depending on the ability score for that character. Spell level. Spell level lists the highest level of spells that can be cast by a wizard with this intelligence. Wizards with, or characters with ability scores of 1 through 8 in intelligence would not be able to learn any spell level. Ability scores 9, they'd be able to learn up to 4th level in wizard spells. Ability scores 10 through 11 up to 5th spell level. Ability scores 12 and 13 would be able to learn up to the 6th level of wizard spells. Ability score 14 through 15 up to the 7th level of spells. 16 through 17 ability scores up to the 8th level of wizard spells, and then ability scores of 18 through 25 in intelligence, characters would be able to learn up to the 9th level of wizard spells. So just because you're a wizard does not mean that you can learn all levels of spells. It does depend on your intelligence ability score. Chance to learn spell. Chance to learn spell is the percentage probability that a wizard can learn a particular spell. A check is made as the wizard comes across new spells, not as he advances in level. To make the check, the wizard character must have access to a spellbook containing the spell. If the player rolls the listed percentage or less, his character can learn the spell and copy it into his own spellbook. If the wizard fails the roll, he cannot check that spell again until he advances to the next level, provided he still has access to the spell. So if we look at a chance to learn spell, characters with ability scores and intelligence of 1 to 7 never have a chance to learn any spells. And then from ability score 9 up to 25, the chance to learn ranges from 35% up to 100%, depending on the ability score. And I really like the art in these in the 2E rules books. Really sparked the imagination when thinking about going on adventures and creating characters and what the adventures would be and the settings. It was really, really cool. Maximum number of spells per level, which is an optional rule. This number indicates the maximum number of spells a wizard can know from any particular spell level. Once a wizard has learned the maximum number of spells he's allowed in a given spell level, he cannot add any more spells of that level to his spellbook unless the optional spell research system is used. Once a spell is learned, it cannot be unlearned and replaced by a new spell. For example, Delsinora, the mage, has an intelligence of 14. She currently knows 7 third-level spells. During an adventure, she finds a musty old spellbook on the shelves of a dank, forgotten library. Blowing away the dust, she sees a third-level spell she has never seen before. Excited, she sits down and carefully studies the arcane notes. Her chance to learn the spell is 60%. Rolling the dice, Delsinora's player rolls a 37. She understands the curious instructions and can copy them into her own spellbook. When she is finished, she has 8 third-level spells, only one away from her maximum number. If the die roll had been greater than 60, or she already had 9 third-level spells in her spellbook, or the spell had been greater than 7th level, the maximum level her intelligence allows her to learn, she could not have added it to her collection. Well, that seems very restrictive. Let's take a look to see how many spells a character could learn given their intelligence. So looking at the intelligence table, table 4, max number of spells per level column. Characters with intelligence scores of 8 or lower can never learn any spells, but at ability score of 9, a character can learn 6 spells per spell level. That seems a little restrictive, but we'll take a look later on to see how many spells are in each level. Once you get to ability score 18 in intelligence, you can learn up to 18 spells per level, which seems high and fair. And then if you have an intelligence of 19 or higher, you can learn all spells within any given spell level. But yeah, again, if your intelligence is low, that can be restrictive depending on the level of spells you're trying to learn. Spell immunity. Spell immunity is gained by those with exceptionally high intelligence scores. Those with the immunity notice some inconsistency or inexactness in the illusion or phantasm, automatically allowing them to make their saving throws. All benefits are cumulative, thus a character with a 20 intelligence is not fooled by first or second level illusion spells. So looking at the intelligence table, table 4, under the spell immunity column, we see that starting at ability score 19, characters are immune to first level illusions. Then if we jump to ability score 20, the characters are now immune to first level and second level illusions. Jumping all the way up to ability score 25, characters would be immune to first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh level illusions. Wisdom. Wisdom describes a composite of the character's enlightenment, judgment, guile, willpower, common sense, and intuition. It can affect the character's resistance to magical attack. It is the prime requisite of priests. Those with a wisdom score of 16 or higher gain a 10% bonus to experience points earned. Clerics, druids, and other priests with wisdom scores of 13 or higher also gain bonus spells over and above the number they are normally allowed to use. Magic Defense Adjustment. Magic Defense Adjustment listed on Table 5 applies to saving throws against magical spells that attack the mind, such as beguiling, charm, fear, hypnosis, illusions, possession, suggestion, etc. These bonuses and penalties are applied automatically, without any conscious effort from the character. So looking at the Wisdom table, Table 5, under the Magical Defense Adjustment column, any character with an ability score of 7 or less would have a penalty ranging from -1 to -6. Any Wisdom ability score from 8 to 14 would not have any penalty or bonus adjustment, and ability scores in Wisdom of 15 through 25 would have bonuses in their Magical Defense Adjustment from 1 to 4, depending on their stat. Bonus spells. Bonus spells indicate the number of additional spells a priest, and only a priest, is entitled to because of his extreme wisdom. Note that these spells are available only when the priest is entitled to spells of the appropriate level. Bonus spells are cumulative, so a priest with a wisdom of 15 is entitled to 2 first level bonus spells and 1 second level bonus spell. So looking at the Wisdom table, or Table 5, if you're a priest class and have a ability score starting at 13, you will begin to get bonus spells. For example, if you do have a 13 as your wisdom score and are a priest, you get 1 bonus spell at the first level. If you have a 14, you'll get 2 bonus spells at the first level. If you have an ability score of 15, you would get 2 first level bonus spells and a bonus spell of the second level. And that goes all the way up to 18 as an ability score, with a 4th level spell, a 3rd level spell, 2 second level spells, and 2 first level spells, because the bonuses are cumulative. Chance of spell failure. Chance of spell failure states the percentage chance that any particular spell fails when cast. Priests with low wisdom scores run the risk of having their spells fizzle. Roll percentile dice every time the priest casts a spell. If the number rolled is less than or equal to the listed chance for spell failure, the spell is expended with absolutely no effect whatsoever. Note that priests with wisdom scores of 13 or higher don't need to worry about their spells failing. So we look at the Wisdom table, Table 5, chance of spell failure column. If you have an ability score of 1, you have an 80% chance of your spell failing every time you cast it. And that reduces down to 0% once you hit ability score 13. So if you don't have an ability score of 13 in Wisdom as a priest, you always have some percentage of failing, or some chance of failing, when you cast a spell. Spell immunity. Spell immunity gives those extremely wise characters complete protection from certain spells, spell-like abilities, and magical items as listed. The immunities are cumulative, so that a character with a wisdom of 23 is immune to all listed spells up to and including those listed on the 23 wisdom row. So if we look at Wisdom table, Table 5, under the spell immunity column, once a character has, or if a character has, an ability score of 19 in wisdom, they are immune to cause fear, charm person, command, friends, hypnotism. If they have an ability score of 20, they are immune to those spells, as well as forget, hold person, ray of enfeeblement, scare. If they have an ability score of 21, they are immune to all the previous spells plus fear. Ability score of 22, all the previous spells plus charm monster, confusion, emotion, fumble, suggestion. An ability score of 23, they are immune to all the previous spells plus chaos, feeble mind, hold monster, magic jar, and quest. If they have an ability score of 24, they are immune to all the previous spells plus Gies, mass suggestion, rod of rulership. If they have an ability score of 25, they are immune to all the previous spells plus antipathy/sympathy, death spell, and mass charm. Charisma. The charisma score measures a character's persuasiveness, personal magnetism, and ability to lead. It is not a reflection of physical attractiveness, although attractiveness certainly plays a role. It is important to all characters, but especially to those who must deal with non-player characters, mercenary hirelings, retainers, and intelligent monsters. It dictates the total number of henchmen a character can retain and affects the loyalty of henchmen, hirelings, and retainers. Very interesting that it does point out that it is not the physical attractiveness of a character, which many people use charisma to dictate in most games. It's funny. Maximum number of henchmen states the number of non-player characters who will serve as a permanent retainer of the player character. It does not affect the number of mercenary soldiers, men-at-arms, servitors, or other persons in the pay of the character. So we look at the charisma table, table 6, maximum number of henchmen column. Those characters with a charisma score of 1 would not be able to get any henchmen, and characters starting with an ability score of 2 in charisma all the way up to 25 would get anywhere from 1 to 50 maximum number of henchmen that they can retain. Loyalty base. Loyalty base shows the subtraction from or addition to the henchmen's and other servitors' loyalty scores in the Dungeon Master's Guide. This is crucial during battles when morale becomes important. So the loyalty base for any character is a modifier to see if hirelings and henchmen and any others that follow the character remain loyal to them. So on the charisma table, or table 6, under the loyalty base column, any characters with an ability score of 8 or less in charisma would suffer a penalty ranging from -1 to -8, and any characters with ability scores between 9 and 13 would not have any penalty or bonus to their loyalty base modifier, and starting at ability score 14, characters would receive a bonus between 1 all up to 20 for an ability score of 25 for their loyalty base modifier. Reaction adjustment. Reaction adjustment indicates the penalty or bonus due to the character because of charisma when dealing with non-player characters and intelligent creatures. For example, Wrath encounters a centaur, an intelligent creature. Wrath's charisma is only 6, so he is starting off with 1 strike against him. He probably should try to overcome this slight handicap by making generous offers of gifts or information. So if we look at the charisma table, table 6, under reaction adjustment, any character with an ability score in charisma of 7 or less receives a penalty ranging from -1 to -7. Any ability score in charisma from 8 to 12 receive no penalties or bonuses for reaction adjustment, and starting at ability score 13 up to those ability scores of 25, characters would get a +1 to a +14 bonus in the reaction adjustment. Optional racial adjustment. So an optional rule. If your DM is using this rule, your character's apparent charisma may be altered when dealing with beings of different races. These alterations are given in Chapter 2, page 20, after the different player characters' races have been explained. What the numbers mean. Now that you have finished creating the ability scores for your character, stop and take a look at them. What does all this mean? Suppose you decide to name your character Wrath, and you rolled the following ability scores for him. Strength 8, Dexterity 14, Constitution 13, Intelligence 13, Wisdom 7, Charisma 6. Wrath has strengths and weaknesses, but it is up to you to interpret what the numbers mean. Here are just 2 different ways these numbers could be interpreted. 1. Although Wrath is in good health, Constitution 13, he's not very strong, Strength 8, because he's just plain lazy. He never wanted to exercise as a youth, and now it's too late. His low wisdom and charisma scores, 7 and 6 respectively, show that he lacks the common sense to apply himself properly and projects a slothful, I'm not going to bother attitude, which tends to irritate others. Fortunately, Wrath's natural wit, Intelligence 13, and Dexterity, 14, keep him from being a total loss. Thus, you might play Wrath as an irritating, smart alecky twerp, forever ducking just out of range of those who want to squash him. 2. Wrath has several good points. He has studied hard, Intelligence 13, and practiced his manual skills, Dexterity 14. Unfortunately, his strength is low, 8, from a lack of exercise, all those hours spent reading books. Despite that, Wrath's health is still good, Constitution 13. His low wisdom and charisma, 7 and 6 respectively, are a result of his lack of contact and involvement with people outside the realm of academics. Looking at the scores this way, you could play Wrath as a kindly, naive, and shy professorial type who's a good tinkerer, always fiddling with new ideas and inventions. Obviously, Wrath's ability scores, often called stats, are not the greatest in the world, yet it is possible to turn these disappointing stats into a character who is both interesting and fun to play. Too often players become obsessed with good stats. These players immediately give up on a character if he doesn't have a majority of above average scores. There are even those who feel a character is hopeless if he does not have at least one ability of 17 or higher. Needless to say, these players would never consider playing a character with an ability score of 6 or 7. In truth, Wrath's survivability has a lot less to do with his ability scores than with your desire to roleplay him. If you give up on him, of course he won't survive. But if you take an interest in the character and roleplay him well, then even a character with the lowest possible scores can present a fun, challenging, and all-around exciting time. Does he have a charisma of 5? Why? Maybe he's got an ugly scar. His table manners could be atrocious. He might mean well, but always manage to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. He could be bluntly honest to the point of rudeness, something not likely to endear him to most people. His dexterity is a 3? Why? Is he naturally clumsy or blind as a bat? Don't give up on a character just because he has a low score. Instead, view it as an opportunity to roleplay, to create a unique and entertaining personality in the game. Not only will you have fun creating that personality, but other players and the DM will have fun acting and reacting to him. Well, that concludes Chapter 1 on ability scores. So the next video, I will read the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Dungeon Master's Guide, Introduction, and first chapter on ability scores. And after that, I will do a practical demonstration of rolling up scores and adding them to a character sheet. So I hope this read along of the first chapter of the Player's Handbook for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition was useful to some of you. And I hope that it inspires you to grab a copy of the Player's Handbook yourself and learn how to play AD&D 2e. For the Dungeon Masters out there, join me in my next video. For the players, I would just stick with what we read today and wait until the next players only video comes out, which will be Chapter 2, all about characters. If you do roll some characters up, I'd love to see what you've named your character, the stats for your character, and maybe how you're going to roleplay those stats. Did you get a 13 in strength? Did you get a 3 in intelligence? Did you get a 3 in wisdom? What are those going to mean for your character? What method of rolling stats did you use? Did you use one roll 3d6 straight down the line, no substitutions? Did you use 2 roll per stat and pick the highest roll of the 3d6s? Did you use 4 dice, drop the lowest, and go right down the line? How did you roll up your character? I'd love to know. Put that in the comments below. Like and subscribe so you can get a notification when I put out the next video. And we'll see you next time. Enjoy the adventure.